So welcome. Greetings, Andrea. We so appreciate your leadership, as always, in solidarity. And as always, at CFC, we begin things by acknowledging our creator, our ancestors, the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We also acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So Andrea, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work with us?
Oh, well, thank you so much for that lovely and warm welcome. It's really wonderful to be here with you today. It's a beautiful October day in my home. I live in Ottawa, which is also known as the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. And so about me, I have the privilege and the honor of working with community foundations all across the country as part of the team at Community Foundations of Canada. There are 205 incredible community foundations across the country. And fun fact, I don't know if you know this, there's also community foundations across 75 countries around the world. And so there's close to 2,000 organizations that identify as a community foundation. And so my work has been in this space, specifically with community foundations, for 13 years, which feels really wild to say that it's been that long. And I've been part of the CFC team for in a few different capacities over almost 10 of those years. And so very quickly coming up to the 14th year and really honored to still be doing this great work and doing it alongside not only our network, but with partners like CFC and amazing organizations that remind us to aspire to always do good and to do good better.
Absolutely. It's always a joy to work with your team. Andrew, Melanie, Genevieve, Michelle, so many Nicole Daw. There's so many remarkable colleagues that we've met over the years to CFC and the dynamic, bold work that you do in terms of supporting not just SPOs and nonprofits and charities, but the actual sector in terms of advancing some of the most pervasive social issues that we have. So once again, I applaud you and your colleagues for your leadership. And yeah, I give thanks. I really do. So my next question is, what inspires you most about your work currently?
So, you've sort of you've tipped my hand a little bit with your lovely comments about the team. There's two things that inspire me about the work that I'm fortunate to do. One is the secret magic, not so secret, but totally magic way in which CFC as an organization, Community Foundations as a network, and certainly the network of partners that we work with, there are incredible people who sit around our table, who are part of our circles. And every single day, I am inspired by the people who I get to interact with and to learn from. And I think that's a really incredible space to be in and a fortunate space to be in. And that's part of what gets me excited to do the work, because there's always someone who looks at a challenge differently. There's always experiences or ideas to the table. And I think if we're collectively trying to change the trajectory of community, we need all of those perspectives. And it's inspiring to be part of those conversations. The other thing that inspires me about our work is the way in which we're really leaning into a combination in this unique balance between experience and data. And that being, what actually is happening in communities? How can we know and better understand not only an individual's experience in that community, but the way in which that system is operating and working. And so when I think about things like our vital signs that happen both nationally as well as locally, the way in which those research studies do that balance in a really beautiful way. So first, they look at statistical data and really get into the nuts and bolts of what is a living wage in this community? What is the cost of a home? How are crime rates shifting, changing, et cetera? All of those hard facts and understanding that is so important. The other piece is, how do people experience those facts? And what do they believe about how that experience impacts their lives? And that's the beauty of vital signs. It's that intersection between that element of experience and that element of data. And that, to me, it's inspiring, to your question, but it also just helps us better understand the trajectory that we can move in to make those experiences, to make those communities stronger, better, brighter, bolder for the future.
Absolutely. I couldn't share that enough. I remember when I was very young in this sector, I was a gang intervention worker in a community, and the first poverty via postal code report came out. And then there was the 3 cities report that came out from Helsinki and Dr. Grace Galabuzzi. And then the vital signs started showing up. And vital signs has been a remarkable tool, I think, for folks doing systems change work and trying to address problems. Because remember, data is a love language. You need data to inform practice. You need data to identify who are the thought leaders and the practitioners in the space. And I think a lot of times when we think about some of the problems that we're facing, it's not really a how to solve, it's a who and a where. Who are the thought leaders and practitioners actually doing the work, and where are the communities of practice that are actually making those changes effective? And can they be replicated? Can they be supported? Can they be enabled? Can it be shifted? So definitely vital signs remarkable. So thank you for bringing that up. And once again, raising the bar for the ecosystem to recognize that data is imperative to advance any type of meaningful work in community economic development or community development work. So my next question to you is, in terms of you and your colleagues, what challenges and barriers do you face? And what are some of the approaches and strategies that you work on as it relates to overcoming these challenges and barriers?
Well, first, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that data is a love language, but I like it and I'm going to remember it. Challenges and barriers. I mean, I think there's all the obvious things that people read about and they hear about and they observe and they see, and we can certainly talk about those. The thing that I've been thinking a lot about, and I'm not unique in this, is communication and the way in which how we interact with one another when we're having positive conversations, easy conversations, challenging conversations, hard conversations. And I was in a session 2 weeks ago, maybe, where a presenter said something that I can't stop thinking about. He said, in conversations, and we were particularly talking about more, I think, challenging conversations, but in conversations, it's quite often that 80%, give or take, we are talking about the same topic. 80% of the time, we're talking about the same topic in this conversation. But the other 20% of information, of data, of perspective, of experience, of what we want the outcome potentially to be, may be very different. And so we actually have potentially 3 conversations happening. The shared conversation of the 80%, your 20% and my 20%. Not to say that there might not be overlap in terms of values or in terms of objectives, but when we aren't having the same conversation, how much we move quickly through change, or how much discrepancy or disagreement or challenge there can be, is really impacted by that 20%. And of course, that's an estimate. It's never always like that. And I think about that in terms of how we show up, how we stand up for community, how we support community, how we support one another, how we talk about the future that we want, and in particular, how we identify how things have been. Some might call it the status quo, and how we identify how we want to change that, knowing all that we know. And, to your point, knowing that likely we probably have a lot in common and we probably want to move things forward, but that nuance of communication and the way in which it happens, I think that's just a space that I've been thinking a lot about for myself, for my own leadership, but in my professional work in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. My grandmother had a saying. She used to say, hurry up and take your time. And I know it sounds kind of contradictory, but it
That's good.
resonates in so many spaces for me. That concept of hurry up and take your time. I know that at CFC, we work on a lot of intergenerational collaboration initiatives, primarily because a lot of times you have young people that we engage with that believe they discovered racism or climate change or affordable housing issues or whatever it is, and not recognizing, well, no, there's elders and community stalwarts have been working on these pervasive problems for a very long time. But then you also have elders and community stalwarts who sometimes have a very specific way of looking at the world and may not respect the perspective of a young person coming up in the space. So that intergenerational collaboration piece is important because, to your point, systemic transformation, systems change, sometimes is incremental. And that incrementalism really drives more younger people crazy. And they are sometimes accuse elders and older folks of being too incremental in terms of the approach. And like I just turned 40, so I'm kind of in the middle of these two demographics, like in my elders that are in their mid 60s doing this work, and the young folks that are 25 trying to change the world in a day, overnight. And I feel like that model that my grandmother instilled in me around hurry up and take your time always resonates. Like, yeah, we have to have a certain level of agency and urgency in our work, but we have to also respect that we're not the first to attempt this, and we won't be the last either. You know what I mean? And I think that's a really interesting insight that I lean on often when I think about
It's a good one.
Yeah. Give thanks for your candor and transparency around that conversation. So my next question is, do you have a set of key priorities right now in terms of your work that you'd like to share?
Yeah, yes, for sure. Maybe because it's 10:50 in the morning on a beautiful sunny day. I think in terms of priorities, there are practical priorities that we are talking about and thinking about and moving forward on. But I think the piece that might be more interesting to share is something that we've been talking about in terms of the practice of how we do our work. And we've been trying to articulate the practices that we want to lean deeper into. And that doesn't mean that the priorities or the outcomes that we care about aren't just as important, but how we get there really matters too, right? Like your grandmother, hurry up and take your time. Like that's a practice, and it will influence the outcomes. And I think, we've just been thinking about that a lot. And so some of the practices that we've been talking about, and, I think we do well some days in these, and there are other days when everyone can improve. So we certainly don't have these honed or perfect, or they're not formulaic, they're intuitive in some ways. And so the ones that we've been thinking about are around trust. And what is the practice of trust? How do you build trust? What does that actually mean for you and for others when there's so many complex factors that are reflected in trust, like power is one example. So that the practice around trust we've been thinking about. The other practice we've been thinking about is how do we really champion opportunities for impact, whether or not that's opportunities we're pursuing or opportunities others are pursuing. I think it's about championing it for the outcomes that we care about, but the way in which we practice doing that is something we're being thoughtful about. The other, and these are conversations that you and I have had before, is how do we embed learning and reflection so that we do things differently going forward, so that we stumble, we get back up, and we go out there and we do it. Or we do something successfully and we think this is the way that we should keep doing this because that works. And so that learning and reflection is a practice that as an organization, we're trying to hone more. And as individuals, I'm trying to hone. And, some days you do better than others, but it's a space and a practice that we're thinking about. And then the last practice is that we've been thinking about and moving forward around is both how do we advocate for and tell the story of community philanthropy and the power that it can have and the impact that it can have. And so that's in everything from getting out of the way sometimes for others, to talking to regulators in terms of how can we make process for the system smoother so that the outcomes in community can happen quicker, faster, stronger, whatever the right adjective is for that community. So yeah, priorities, practices, those are some of the things that we're thinking about or trying to think about in a bit of a intentional way, so that those priorities and those outcomes get done in the best way possible.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Thank you so much for your leadership, your candor, transparency, and authenticity. It's been a remarkable conversation so far. I have two last questions for you.
Sure.
So this question is more of a personal question. It's your 90th birthday party. You're surrounded by friends and family and loved ones. What do you want to hear about Andrea and your life?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I don't know if are you getting background noise here? There's an animal that's out there that, okay. 90th birthday. You know what? I don't, so full disclosure, I don't love being the center of attention. So I don't know if I would want a 90th birthday party where people are like saying things about me, but I'd love to have a 90th birthday party with people who I love. And so maybe that's, a picnic somewhere and it's just a mix and mingle. But I think the cast of amazing characters who would be there would be the piece that I'd be focused in on and wanting to see and to be part of. And so I think that comes from the places where you learn the most. And that's probably your family and your friends and your colleagues who become friends. I think it's people who inspire you. There's that saying, I don't know who said it, but you are a result of the 5 people or 7 people who you spend the most time with, or whatever that saying is. And so I try to surround myself with people who inspire me. And so I hope that they're there to celebrate the big 90, which is many years away, just as an FYI. And I think too, like, how do you create an afternoon in the sunshine that's reflective of the person? And so I hope that it's about, the people who you love, the people who inspire you, that you've surrounded yourself with and who make you better. And maybe you got to do cool things together over the years. I'd love that, like a cast of characters who are your like co-conspirators in a really good way. Those are the people I want at my birthday party.
Ashe. No, thank you so much for that. I appreciate you. So my last question, do you have a call to action or a closing thoughts for our listeners and viewers?
I think that maybe it's an invitation more than anything, in that, as we at CFC pursue our work and our practices, as I am a part of the team that pursues our work and our practices, an invitation to you and your team. I think you have this invitation, but to others who may be in our space or on the periphery of our space or in adjacent spaces, an invitation to reach out. Because I think that the more characters who sit around our table, who are part of our circle, I think that's where the magic happens of interesting work. So an invitation to those who may be curious to reach out.
Ashe. Well, thank you so much, Andrea, for your leadership and your consistent solidarity and openness to building and stewarding and cultivating remarkable relationships. And we'll close this interview the way we began, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on, acknowledging our ancestors, acknowledging all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Andrea. So appreciate you.
Thank you.